So the initiative comes out of a research that we carried out in 2015, time flies basically, when a group of people based within the Institute of Civil Engineers started to debate how much does the industry waste on error and what are the root causes. And in summary, I think people were quite surprised by the conclusions that we came to. The first surprise was that the industry is probably spending of the order of 20-21% of its turnover in correcting error. And that's made up of obviously the cost of the error, it's the time, consequential effects and things like that as well. And that the root causes of those errors was not skills. Root causes for error were planning, design changes, design and culture, or lack of culture basically. So having completed the report and launched it, we then said, what are we going to do next? We could have collected dust, but we decided that we would see what we could do to set up a not-for-profit company, it's paid for by subscription, which would have the four aims basically. One, keep pushing on the cultural aspect, see what we can do to change the culture. Secondly, what could we do about education and training? Thirdly, what could we do about processes and systems? And fourthly, how does digital technology and how does technology help us to eliminate error? In the summer of 2017, we had a launch, which was very kindly hosted by John Armitt, and as a result of that launch, we increased our membership quite significantly to the sort of high 20s. An interesting group of companies, a number of main contractors, also some tier 2 companies, also some consultants, and last but by no means least, an insurance broker and a solicitor's firm who are involved in professional indemnity claims. One of the things that had come out while we were forming this group was just how companies that are normally bitter rivals were very keen to share their experiences once they got into the right environment. So it was really interesting to just see all of a sudden, it probably wasn't completely, they all discovered they were all making the same mistakes, all doing the same things wrong, so why couldn't they find a joint way of fixing some of those things? So anyway, the CITB had put together a fund to see what training could be developed to improve productivity, specifically by reducing error. And we put together 3 consortia of our members to apply for grants from the CITB to develop some of this training. And at the end of 2017, we were successful. So, and using the Get It Right initiative and some of its suppliers to develop the training, these 3 consortia are now developing training. By the end of 2019, hopefully the CITB will be comfortable with them, and then they'll be launched to the industry at large, which will, I think, will be a great thing to have done. We'd identified in our initial research that errors in design are quite a big cause of long-term errors, both short and long-term errors in the construction process. So we thought, well, let's have a look and see what we could do to help people make less mistakes in design. And we came up with a booklet which was published towards the end of last year, which was about how we could eliminate error in the design process. And we came up with 12 recommendations ranging from culture, I keep mentioning culture, to upfront investment in design, perhaps more upfront investment in design will reduce the number of errors. So we came up with these 12 recommendations, and the sad thing is that there's absolutely nothing original about any of them. Yes. Well, there might be on the last one, but the other 11 are just stuff that we all ought to be doing and aren't.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
It struck me when I was thinking about this that, over 30 years ago, when I was working as a publisher, total quality came along, the total quality movement and the continuous improvement movement, And we're 30 years later, and I wondered, is this specific to construction? Is there something about construction that makes this harder than other industries?
I think it is different to some industries. And I think it's the industries that differentiate themselves are those that have actually worked out that doing something different might really do something to help them to get it right and to save money. And I think generally, and it's not completely true, generally I think the automotive industry is quite good at that. And I think that generally the aeronautical industry is quite good at that. But the reality is, certainly in my perception, that we're really still doing things in exactly the same way as we always have done things. And if I could give you a parallel, which is over my career, when I started work, health and safety was a lot worse than it is now. And health and safety was managed by making sure that if it was a large enough project, then there was a health and safety manager on site, and if it was a smaller project, then there was a part-time health and safety manager. And the reality was that responsibility for safety on a project was deemed to be the responsibility of the health and safety manager and nobody else. Well, of course, as we know, quite rightly, all of that's changed, and for the better. It still could get better still, of course it could. But now everybody knows that health and safety, the responsibility for being safe on a site and for health and safety on a site is each and every person, from the most junior person on the site in the workforce to the project director or higher. Now, it's my perception, and I see it even in what we're doing now, that quality is still the responsibility of a department or a group, rather than the responsibility of each and every person. I'm not saying that people who are not in the quality department aren't interested in quality. They are. When we complete a project in the construction world, it's normal for there to be a number, let's just use it, a number of defects outstanding. When I bought my new car, there were no defects. And another point that is, and I think troubles me, which is not necessarily pure get it right philosophy. When I bought my car, I knew, it was a new car, I knew that it was okay, that it had been signed off by the manufacturer as being okay. Yet somehow in our industry, we seem to think that we need to have a third party to sign off that our project is okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a third party signing it off, but who's owning getting it right in the first place? It actually should be the person, the company that's delivering it, should be able to say, I know that this project is absolutely 100%. Yes, you might want somebody to check that that's the case, but it should be the norm that it's 100% and it really is 100%. But that needs a change of attitude and a change of philosophy.
Yes. You talked about this idea of culture and indeed design, and I wonder how much of this error is actually institutionalized in the way that we build things, that there's an acceptance that an element of wastage and rework is just part of the process of building this house or this factory.
I think that's absolutely the case. That waste is taken for granted. It's taken for granted that we might not always get it right. That starts during the design process. So yeah, all the way through. I mean, good enough is okay in our world, and good enough shouldn't be okay.
Yes.
And I think that's it's a really important point. I heard a representative of a trades body involved in our industry on Radio 4 a few months ago saying, well, a few drips of paint here and there on a completed house are okay. I don't think that is okay. It may be minor, but if I'm the person who's bought that house, why should anybody come back?
The problem with that accepting a culture of wastage is how do you know that you're doing better? If you can't see the wastage in front of you, how do you identify and recognise improvement?
That's a really difficult question to answer, because there are, in many ways, there are not there aren't the right metrics to actually measure how you're doing. One of the things that we would like to try to develop is a simple, and therefore not completely accurate, but a simple metric for measuring how organisations are doing in terms of delivering quality. In a similar way to, in terms of health and safety, every company has to declare its accident frequency rate. So this isn't the right word, but defects frequency rate of some form would be a good thing to have. I'm incredibly wary about creating a process that's going to require more input from people. But there are ways where we might have data already which could be used in a different way. For instance, most big projects are run with a web-based portal system for all of the information. So every drawing that is and design that goes through the system is logged, etc., etc., etc. So therefore, actually, behind all of that, within that portal, there's a huge amount of data as to what's happening to that information. Now, for instance, there might be how many times is a particular drawing turned round before it's finally approved. How many requests for information are there? And maybe there is a way of actually utilising that information that's already there in a different way. I do know that some companies are running a form of what I would call the defects frequency rate, and they are reporting internally. I don't think they're prepared to share it outside for reasons that I understand, but we need to get over in the long run. So there are some companies that are looking at that. But you're right, I mean, how do we prove that the 21% has gone down to 10%?
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that. It's
Yes.
a really difficult question. All I know is that whether you, anywhere across the world, you will see people saying that we're spending that sort of money.
Yes, yes. So for organisations that want to get involved,
Yeah.
what would you advocate?
Well, I would advocate membership, basically, because at the moment we're now 36 members. We now range from some top infrastructure clients to consultants, and the benefits that you get out of it is actually just being able to share with a lot of people what we're doing and what different organisations are doing. We're happy to run workshops and seminars with the members to try and spread the message further. We have working groups on design, technology, and obviously the training that's going on, that's reasonably sort of settled for the moment, but who knows where that's going to go in the future. So working groups, sharing information are the key areas, basically. And there is a subscription. It's funded by a subscription which is predicated on the size of the organisation.